Hello guys and welcome back to another mapping video. Now today I'm gonna be doing something that may be similar to the video I've done yesterday, which is basically what if the BRICS, if you don't know what BRICS is, just like search it up or like watch the video I made yesterday because I explained what BRICS is. Basically, the video I made yesterday was about if BRICS existed in a mostly Western world. So, some countries were a lot more pro-Western, while some countries still remain pro-Eastern. Now, today I'll be doing something that may sound similar, but is slightly different. It's actually still gonna be BRICS in a mostly Western world, but maybe this time not mostly, but actually fully. That's right. In this case, we have democratic Russia, we have democratic China, etc. And now, maybe in that way, BRICS may actually not exist, because BRICS was also kind of formed as a way to counter Western influence. But I'm gonna be doing a scenario where BRICS actually still happens even if most of the world is leaning towards the West. And I'll be explaining how it may be possible. Okay, I'm gonna explain. So first of all, let's take like the BRICS members. Once again, these countries in this case they are not authoritarian. They're actually, democracies. So yeah, it's actually gonna make it interesting because if they are democratic, then some countries who actually lean towards the West may actually not be willing to join the war on either side because they hold relations with both sides. If both sides are kind of democratic, then yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Let me tell you that. Also, there are some slightly different borders, because Mongolia is part of China. That's actually part of the claims of the RC, the Republic of China. Basically, what is Taiwan of TL? They actually claim Mongolia. And I think that China will, in this case, it will be a Western leaning China. They will take the opportunity to take Mongolia after the collapse of the Soviet Union happens, which, of course, still happens in this timeline if you want a fully Western world. Now, of course, once again, we had to bring in, the other BRICS member countries. So yeah, we are gonna bring those as well. So one thing is, Brazil, South Africa. I mean, we know the thing. And this one, we gotta get in the other countries. So yeah, I think these. Okay, there are these ones and these ones, and then obviously Indonesia. So let's also bring this one here as well. And I'm trying to make as quick as possible, so so it won't be as long as the other video. So yeah, I really hope that. Okay. Okay, so I think these are, all the countries. All right, so as you can see, there are some differences to the video I made yesterday. For example, in this case, I do not include Argentina, where Argentina is not already a member of BRICS OTL. Once again, like watch the video I made yesterday for explanation, but basically, um, in the video I made yesterday, I assumed that the Argentina left still rules, so that's why they joined BRICS, so the Argentina right didn't win. In this case, we are assuming that even if Venezuela here does not have any crisis, because once again, no, the Cuban revolutions adopts a more social democratic view. So once again, these countries don't get communist revolutions, but instead they adopt social democracies. So in this case, socialism 21st century is actually truly a democratic socialist thing. Who knows? But so basically, those countries, are wealthier. So, but even without any Venezuelan crisis, some of these countries are still gonna vote right eventually. And even these countries and so like Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, like these countries will actually resemble most of the Latin American politics. Like in this case, the left will rule democratically, and then there will also be times in periods in which the right also rules the country. But nonetheless, these countries are better off. So yeah, I'm assuming that the Argentina right still won here. It will be interesting to see what countries here are left leaning, what countries are right leaning here. Because yeah, I'm still gonna be making a version with NATO, but it's because it's gonna be interesting because there are gonna be different dynamics. With Russia and China here being democracies instead of authoritarian countries. Also, in this case, I include Egypt, Ethiopia, and also Iran. Even these countries in this alternate timeline, they are monarchies. I'm gonna assume that just like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they're aligned with the West, but they also hold some relations with like Russia and China. Okay, I'm gonna be saying, how could a democratic pro-Western Russia and a democratic pro-Western China form BRICS in this alternate timeline? Well, I'm gonna try to explain it now. Sure, if there are democratic parties ruling Russia, they definitely will be a lot less warmongering than the hostile Russian government and more willing to cooperate with the West. However, even the Russian liberals themselves, in some cases, are skeptical of the West. Like, do you really think that a democratic Russia will be a puppet to the West? Like, uh, like, sure, they may be more willing, to allow NATO to expand in these areas, but they still secretly may not like it. So they still, may be willing to fight with China. And once again, China, a democratic China, this China, without having suffered from any of the communist policies that China suffered, after the Chinese Civil War was won by the communists, that never happened. So China actually became a world power even earlier than OTL. Yeah, in this case, when it's about competing with Japan and the US, it's more of a friendly rivalry rather than outright hostility. But still, China here, just like Russia, they are more Western friendly, but they still are not fully Western. Like they still want to safeguard their own interests, and I think that's the thing that could bring Russia and China, even if they both are democracies even if they both are democracies in this timeline, together to form an alternate BRICS alliance. And of course, India will join because they are allies with Russia, and once again, those countries will join because, I mean, these countries are also non-aligning, but still pro-Western, just like how Russia and China are in this timeline. So they will still be interested to join BRICS. Of course, Brazil will be interested. Same thing for South Africa. Same thing for Indonesia, since they will still have ties with both India and China, even if China is democratic. I mean, I think Indonesia will always love India and China no matter what governments they have, if I'm being honest. So yeah, now it's gonna be interesting because in this case there's no Argentina in BRICS, but they still have these countries in BRICS, and actually it may actually be beneficial because here we're talking about a monarchy is Iran, a monarchy is Egypt, and a monarchy is Ethiopia. Now those countries are more pro-Western. They means that they have better equipment. In this case, Ethiopia has sea access, and Egypt controls both Sudan and South Sudan, and both Egypt, Ethiopia, and Iran, like their equipment is better, their economy is better, so they are more powerful. They are more powerful. So I think it may be beneficial. But then once again, like Argentina, it, Argentina on the BRICS side really like makes Brazil not really worry about this southern front. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. But first of all, let's bring NATO in this, of course. And now, I mean, you already know what the NATO members are, so yeah, I think NATO even this like in this case, I'm interpreting the fully Western world map in a different way. I think that's like the fun thing. Like you don't always have to say if the world was fully Western, this is how it'll be now. You can have different interpretations in mind. And in this case, I have two different interpretations of a fully Western world. So yeah, it's interesting. Yesterday I put a certain interpretation, and today I'm putting a different one. So once again, it's interesting. Let me tell you that. Right, I mean, of course, get all the major NATO countries. I mean, it's easy. Sweden and Finland are still not in NATO, even in this different interpretation of a fully Western world, because once again, even in this timeline, Russia never invaded Ukraine. So yeah, but these countries are still in NATO. Of course, Ukraine without getting rid of Russia, they're gonna opt for a more neutral approach, having relations with both West and Russia. And those countries are basically still in NATO. So yeah, including all of these, yeah, 74 countries. And Bosnia and Herzegovina probably still join NATO. Okay, so this is alternate BRICS versus NATO war scenario. Once again, this one is gonna be interesting because once again there are some countries involved here. For example, in this case, Turkey has a front line with BRICS. In the video I made yesterday, Turkey didn't have it. In fact, in that video I made yesterday, Iran actually joined the West side. In this case, there's a front line here. So yeah, probably another front line, to for the the West to worry about. So yeah, for now it's gonna be like this, and then obviously eventually other countries will join as well. First of all, this is Brazil. Obviously, Brazil will obviously be able to take French Guiana. I mean, Kazakhstan. I mean, we already done this yesterday. Like the initial phases, we kind of know. I want to move to like the different alternates out, which is probably is what's gonna make it interesting. Now let's say that Kaliningrad is gonna be able to be taken over, but Russia will begin to march towards Estonia capital. And same thing also for like Belarus capital. And yeah, I mean it's more not for now. It's like the same stuff I did yesterday, but there will eventually be different things happening. So yeah. All right. So this one here, I know it's mounted as well. Let's assume that Iran will be able to like cross a little bit into Turkey. Still not too much because once again, uh, mountain. This is full of mountains. So yeah. Anyways, at this point, once again, we have to consider which countries may be joining this war here. Um, let's see, I'm not really sure. I mean, I actually am sure which countries will join this. I mean, Georgia will unfortunately get invaded by Russia. Armenia and Azerbaijan will get involved in this. I mean, from here, I already know how it's gonna end. Like Russia, they don't occupy Akkad in South Asia, but they're still gonna invade those areas nonetheless. In this alternate timeline, Azerbaijan is screwed over, and it's point both Russian and Jewish elements into Turkey. By this point, Turkey will put a defensive, but saying Russia will still use this opportunity to begin pushing even more here into the Baltics. And this point means it's under threat. But at this point, like American troops, Canadian troops, also Western European troops are beginning to arrive at the front lines. And now we are, finally beginning having what I just saw you will happen. Some Western Union countries that I may have put on the blue team yesterday, saying in this case, Russia and China are not authoritarian, they are democratic, but not join this war. What are these countries? Vietnam and Korea in this timeline, they are not joining this war. In this scenario, they're not doing so. Once again, they will get folded by China because is a more powerful China now. Of course, if they get Western hate, they could still do it, but those countries, they want to be neutral in this timeline. Since they have good relations with both the West and, democratic China and democratic Russia. The West is still able to get the help of Australia and New Zealand. And, Japan reluctantly joins this war. And the Philippines for now basically says no, they don't want to get involved. They don't want to get involved in this. And then once again, Pakistan once again, like they still don't have any issues with India, so in this case there's no Kashmir dispute. And now they still have Western leaning. They don't have horrible relations with India as much as OTL. They still have good relations with China, even if it's a democratic China, and they still have good relations with Russia, even though it's a democratic Russia. So yeah, Pakistan here is gonna be neutral. Plus, if they join, the blue team, then may get invaded here. So yeah, how I treated Pakistan yesterday, I don't know. Actually, Pakistan may join the West Ham, but I'm not really sure. Like, would Pakistan wanna do that actually? I don't know. Like for the easy but beneficial, and also Pakistan will be sending its troops to the front line here with Turkey. But honestly, I don't think Pakistan is interested in that. So yeah, they don't have that, but maybe some countries will eventually join on this. Like, just give it some time. Let's see, what could happen here. These countries are still really wanna join in, even though the West is kind of pressuring them to do so. But we are gonna be having some countries joining here on NATO side. Argentina is gonna join this. And once again, Argentina here still has that right-wing government, so they're gonna join this on the blue side. Same thing for Paraguay. Bolivia will opt to stay neutral, but both Colombia and Venezuela are joining this on the blue team. Guyana will opt to stay neutral, and Peru will join this on the blue team. Same thing also for Chile. Chile is also joining this on the blue team. And honestly, like, those countries are not really interested in joining this war, like not even these countries. So yeah, once again, Some countries say may be neutral, like Suriname, and here we get a left-leaning government, so they want to be neutral. But actually, all of the blue team countries here have right-wing governments, and actually considering this off base of the Colombia, they recently elected a right slash far right guy, similar to the Argentinian one. Paraguay, they are right-leaning governments, same for Chile and Peru. But also some countries that declare neutrality, they have right-leaning governments such as Bolivia and Ecuador. Guyana, I mean, assuming that Guyana is always like supporting whatever the US does, like I'm assuming that Guyana has a right-leaning government. Even if not right-leaning, it's definitely pro-American. But nonetheless, they declare neutrality here. And now here Venezuela is interesting. In this case, Venezuela, when when the left still rose to power here in the late 90s and the early 2000s, they ruled democratically with the support of the US. So there wasn't much antagonization, and and eventually the right returned to power. In some of the latest years, I'm going to be saying that in 2024 the right returns to power. So yeah, so the left still ruled for quite some time. And it's probably because actually the left, in this case, actually the good policies of the welfare state instead of like making the economy get an inflation. Nonetheless, the right still return, and they are more willing to be with the West. Like under the left, once again it was like good relations with both the West, but also augment cooperation with with non-aligned powers. But under the right, that they are more pro-Western. So yeah, they're gonna all these countries are joining the war here on the blue side. Once again, Peru and China, also OTO. Once again, of all these countries, except for Venezuela, I'm missing this of OTO. What happened geopolitically, OTO. Peru, Chile, and Argentina, they all elected right-leaning governments. So they are all joining the war here on the blue side. Let me see how much I'm recording this. Okay, so yeah, so we'll see. In the video I made yesterday, Brazil actually didn't have to worry about this large front line, and this timeline they have. So yeah, now Argentinian forces will begin to cross into this area of Brazil, but Brazilian forces will begin to cross into this area of Paraguay, and Paraguay is having PTSD flashbacks to a certain war. Now here, Brazilian forces will begin to cross into parts of Venezuela, but meanwhile, these Peruvian and Colombian forces will work together to invade into this area here of Brazil. We also have Brazilian forces crossing into this area here of Peru. And basically okay, I'm actually gonna like put the objectives of what each side wants to do. Brazil, what they're hoping to do is, capitulate Paraguay and, eventually push back the Argentinas and be able to capture Buenos Aires, maybe even get some help from Uruguay. They probably also want to like cut Peru in half in order to make Peru surrender. They probably want to be able to eventually push back this front line here and eventually capture Bogota and maybe even be able to take Venezuela. Pretty ambitious, but I mean also the blue team one is pretty ambitious. They're going up against a pretty powerful country, which is Brazil. Probably Argentina wants to like put a soulmate to this front line, and eventually like focus all the force in order to capture this valuable coastal area of Brazil. Same thing Peru. I mean, the blue team they're united, so they're also working like to boost soulmate in these front lines, like focus on some of these front lines, and like focus on some of these front lines, that they're doing, and capturing the Amazon is really not gonna change anything. You gotta capture the coast. That's why the blue team will probably wait for some US forces to go here and make landings, so Brazil falls quicker. Now, what does the red team want to do here? Well, they basically want to keep pushing here into Turkey, and probably be able to capitulate all this area here of Eastern Europe, and that's pretty much what they want to do. And the blue team obviously they want to hold a defensive front line here, not let Minsk be captured by red team forces, and not let all of the Baltics fall under red team control, and eventually push back this front line. So kind of on what I made the video yesterday. Japan, they're probably just like hosting US bases and targeting whatever ships that are going through this area. And Australia, New Zealand, I mean, and Indonesia, they're probably just like doing a summit here, a Navy summit, like they're bombarding each other, and there are no advancements being made on either side. And Turkey, they probably want to like maybe get the help of some of these countries, against these countries. Also the West as well, also the West as a whole wants get help from some of these surrounding African countries. Then obviously they want Turkey wants to push back this front line, and eventually maybe put a summit with Iran, but liberate these countries and like put pressure on Russia from the southern front. So yeah, once again, Each side has their own ambitions, and we'll see how they're gonna play out. Japan, they're like once again they're still gonna take these islands. Sure, it's a democratic Russia, but Japan still wants to take these claims, and this is a perfect opportunity. Finally, some NATO forces have actually arrived here and are beginning to push back into this area here of Lithuania. Some pressure is relieved from Minsk, so the city feels a lot safer now. This area here of Estonia is gonna fall, but maybe there's gonna be a pushback on this front line here. So yeah, anyways, here the red team is gonna make some more advancements. Once again, it's gonna get cellmated since Turkey, they're beginning to put a more efficient defensive line. And finally, the West is gonna be able to get some of these countries to join the war. Now, which countries will actually? Well, I think that Somalia, in this case, is a more democratic Somalia. They're gonna join this on the blue side. Kenya, great US ally. I mean, they probably have good relations with like a monarchist Ethiopia, but they're gonna choose to join the blue team nonetheless. And now they're also like trying to get some of these countries to join in. I mean, it's really like a lot of these countries are like joining reluctantly. Uh, all countries surrounding South Africa basically abstain from joining. Now the Congo, they're too gonna abstain, but these countries here, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and Tanzania, which is basically the East African Federation, and in the DRC like slash the Congo, they are part of that. Also in this time they're actually called just Congo instead of DRC, but the DRC, which in this alternate timeline is called the Congo, just like this Congo here, is definitely still a member of the East African Federation, but they opt to stay neutral here. Now here they're trying like the West probably wants to also make countries such as the Central African Republic, Chad, Libya, and probably these countries as well get involved. Yeah, we'll see how it will end up eventually. But for now, to be able to get these countries, and of course this is a huge one, Israel. Now, how about these countries? They are probably still like neutrality. While Jordan and Iraq, they're still considering joining the blue team. Probably also Yemen, but in this case, there are more reluctant since there's more red here. So yeah, and Qatar this one like they're neutral and they have relations with both Iran, Saudi Arabia, and also with the West. Yeah, they don't want to do anything. I mean, and probably the blue team navies are already, going to help out here Israel and probably some of the Turkish navy as well. Also, in this case, Israel controls of the Holy Land. Yeah, this is pretty controversial, so like just ignore it, okay? I know that just ignore it, okay? Like this case, Israel like won the first Arab-Israeli war in 1948 quickly, so they were able to like take all of this. I don't know if that's gonna create more peace or like more war. It's up to you. All right. Now, how this is gonna be? Now, the West kind of made these countries join the blue side as sort of a distraction, not really because they're gonna contribute. I mean, they do have some stronger military, so they're not like gonna fall quickly. So it's still gonna be a distraction for the red team here, which is gonna be useful. So Israel is actually a pretty strong country, so they're gonna be able to like put a lot of pressure to both Egypt and Saudi Arabia. As nonetheless, Egyptian and Ethiopian forces begin to push into Uganda and Kenya. We're also going to hear some Ethiopian forces pushing into parts of Somalia, but Somalia is also actually going to push just a little here into this area here of Ethiopia. We will hear Israel, they're gonna, begin pushing into this area here of Egypt, and they're probably also putting like a lot of pressure to this area here of Saudi Arabia. I mean, Israel probably wants Jordan and Iraq to join, so they can begin pushing into Saudi Arabia, and probably a little bit here into Iran as well. So yeah, so slowly but surely, I'll be daring to say that despite for now the red team having more gains, the West is definitely beginning to catch up in terms of gains. Also because the West, and specifically the US, are gonna make a landing in French Guiana, bring freedom there like they always do, and then begin invading into this area here of Brazil. This is a really great day to be pro-Western and a bad day to be non-aligned or even just slightly pro-Eastern. It's more specifically a bad day to be a Brazilian. Also because Argentina, they're not defeating you anymore on football. They're also defeating you on the war fields. Yeah, not great. Because like the Chilean army and the Argentinian army, like they're working together. Not great. Brazil's are gonna try pushing here. and they're also gonna try to push back this area. But then Venezuela is gonna be able to pull a magic trick, suddenly all Brazilian troops are kicked out of their country. Probably a magic trick that worked thanks to US soldiers and probably also some Colombian soldiers. And now this is a unified front line. Yeah, Brazil, they're obviously, gonna try defending, so they're gonna be able to push back in some cases. But at this point, the US, once again, more specifically the US, they're gonna be, begin making naval landings. So Brazil will retreat all the forces out of Peru, and they're gonna put sort of a defensive front line. They don't really care about the Amazon, but they do care about these areas here. So they're, once again, gonna try to push back some of these, but then the West is just gonna march straight in. At this point, Brazil is about to collapse. There's also a lot of opposition to the war. Yeah, and eventually they are gonna, of course, fall. I know that Brazil will not fall that quickly, but I mean, it's whatever. I have to speed run the video since we are at. It's about to almost be a mid-hour video, 30 minutes video. Yeah, still not a pretty short video. Anyways, with this victory here, more Western troops are gonna arrive. So yeah, we'll see now what's gonna happen. Well, basically, the West is gonna be able to convince these countries to join the blue team. We're also gonna be having Morocco joining the blue team, and Algeria, Tunisia, and Mauritania like they declare neutrality. Also, Morocco in this case they have all of their claims. I mean, it's a fully Western world map. What do you expect for Morocco to have all of their claims? All of their claims, obviously. Uh, Anyway, so yeah, so now these countries have joined the blue team. I mean, I know that some of these countries like may not contribute a lot. For example, what are Chad and the and Carl gonna do? But Libya, they have a monarchist government. So once again, like they also have some ties with Russia and China, not just the West. But they decided to join the blue team, and in this case, they are wealthy countries. They also have a good army and a high-tech army, so they're using Western equipment. And they're gonna, begin using that to invade just slightly into Egypt. And, in Egypt, they're beginning to get pressure from both Israel, and it's actually beginning to look like a three-front war. I mean, if this country is like pushing to Egypt, they're just capturing Sudan. Yeah, so for the Egyptian land proper, it's a two-front war, and already a two-front war is not good. So, yeah. Anyways, what Scar's gonna do? I mean, they may take advantage a little bit of the situation, but yeah, Egypt will probably be able to push back eventually. Anyways, unfortunately for like these countries here, they're still getting invaded. At this point, the Egyptian forces, I mean, like, Egypt controls all this land. Like that land could be used for a lot of things, economy, agriculture. This area here as oil. Uh, they will use all of that not only for economy but also for wars. So yeah, that's why Egypt is being able to pull this off pretty quickly. And yeah, Somaliland will secede. At this point, Somalia is barely holding out. But they're still able to hold out since, this democratic Somalia is stronger than OTL Somalia. So they're still nonetheless able to hold out. And at this point, once again, we're going to be having more countries joining this now. Iraq and Jordan, they finally made up their minds that they're going to be joining this war on the blue side. But the West is also actually going to be able to get both Syria and Lebanon on the blue team. But again, in this case, these countries are more pro-Western in comparison to OTL. So they're going to be able to get these countries on the blue side, and that's more like, Turkish troops can get to Israel, Jordan, Iraq quickly and don't like have to do that. So yeah, it's really beneficial for the West to have, these countries, which are really strong, especially Syria and Iraq. Yeah. Anyways, Iraqi forces will begin, to push back, but some Iranian forces will begin to push into Iraq, kind of putting Baghdad under threat. Nonetheless, Israeli troops will immediately go into Jordan and begin invading into these areas here of Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, we'll be having some Saudi forces linking up with the Iranian forces, but still, it's a pretty weak connection. It will probably be cut off eventually. Anyways, let's see what Egypt is gonna do here. Well, yeah, I already told you this was gonna happen. Actually, this is gonna happen as well. And Libya are sort of able to hold out, but meanwhile, Egypt are like towards the car and Chad. Yeah, Chad is not being Chad here. Yeah, yeah. This is okay. I don't know what this war is becoming. In this case, Blue team is not really interested in Indonesia, like But they internally have nothing. I mean, Japan is probably able to defend itself. Also, like there's probably the US Navy also arriving into Japan. I don't think the red team is interested in invading Japan. They're mostly interested in getting gains here, but once again, they're beginning to fail. Russia, they're gonna try to capture Minsk for the last time, but they're gonna waste resources. They can push back on this area. So Russia, they're gonna revise their plan and push a little bit into the Baltics once again. But Turkish forces, having, aid, from Moroccan, Libyan, Syrian, Iraqi forces are gonna begin to push back the red team on this front line here. And yeah, it's becoming pretty interesting. Yeah. I mean, this war will probably go on for a while. Um, and I feel like, the red team may actually deserve some gains since they actually didn't get any yesterday. So, you know what? Yeah, fine. The blue team, they're still gonna be able to push back the Russians here. And the Turks are almost able to kick the Russians out of their country. Iraq, they're gonna be able to like uh, push back Iranian forces as well as Saudi forces. So as they're gonna begin to push back here. Unfortunately for Somalia, they're still falling, and same thing for like these countries at this point. They encircle this entire lake. Same thing for Chad, and honestly Libya, like Libya is actually able to push back mostly. I mean, I feel like that at this point, like the war will just be, I don't know, a stalemate if I had to guess. Like Egypt and Ethiopia, you're not getting those quickly. No one is interested. No one is interested in South Africa. Same thing for Indonesia. You don't want to invade India and China. They have a lot of population. Iran, due to their geography, is hard to invade. Same thing for Saudi Arabia. This trade is basically red team control, if I have to guess. Yemen, if they join the blue team, they're gonna get jumped because they will have nearby Ethiopia. They're gonna have their trade here blocked, and Saudi forces will eventually be able to capitulate the country. And yeah, I mean, of course, Russia. I mean, despite all of this, being plains, you're still not gonna be able to invade all of this, also due to winter. So unless you're able to like get more countries on your side, on the blue team side, like the Congo and like Ukraine, Finland, and probably some of these countries here as well, you're not gonna be able to like win this war. So yeah, it turns out that trading Argentina for like these countries will actually make the red team have some gains, even though Brazil will not have any gains. In fact, they will actually have an opposite thing. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. Okay, so I guess these are all the border changes, so I'll begin. First of all, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina, Paraguay all get land. Specifically, Argentina gets pretty valuable land here along the coast. And in French Guiana also expands here into this coast here of northern Brazil. Then I think that Brazil will probably get a new government. I don't know, whatever the US wants to do. Then moving on here over to Asia, nothing really changes. Indonesia, they're still here. China, India, they're still here. But Japan will get their claims here over the Kuril Islands and Sakhalin. Russia will also lose Kaliningrad over to Poland. But Russia, they've gained land elsewhere. And I also forgot to erase this border. So yeah. Yeah, because also Kazakhstan itself, yeah, poor Kazakhstan, they ended up getting partition between China and Russia. And these are how the borders are gonna look like now. So yeah, Russia, they're gonna gain most of Kazakhstan, and China will also be able to get a little bit of the eastern portions of Kazakhstan. So yeah, so these are the new borders here. And then jumping over here over to Africa, nothing happens to South Africa. Libya didn't lose any land. But basically, here Somaliland gets released, and Ethiopia also gets land out of Kenya and Somalia. They do this weird corridor here, they link out here with this, the Indian Ocean. And Somalia is left crippled, definitely. Egypt they expand into both Chad and Kar, as well as into parts of Uganda and Kenya. By the exchange, Egypt ends up losing all the Sinai Peninsula over to Israel. Jordan expands into Saudi Arabia. Same thing for Iran. They kind of also surround Kuwait. Other than that, nothing really happens to Saudi Arabia. And then Turkey itself didn't really gain anything. But Russia, once again, other than gaining most of Kazakhstan, they're gonna gain Georgia and some parts of Azerbaijan. Armenia will get the Azerbaijani exclave, also they'll claim here over Azerbaijan. And Iran will also gain land, getting the southern portion here of Azerbaijan. So yeah, it was sort of an exchange, the West wants some and then the East wants some. So yeah, so what could I see happening in the future? Yeah, because now we are gonna actually propose what unions could take place in the future. Honestly, what could happen here? I mean, maybe eventually, I don't know, like this Somaliland will join Ethiopia and then maybe also like Djibouti. I don't know, it's up to you guys. I mean, Somalia, I mean, they could either, try to form with Kenya and probably some of these other countries will probably cripple from the war. These countries are probably also crippled from paying war reparations. They may, try to like form a this African Federation team. Initially, it doesn't have the Congo, so, something like this. Now, alternatively, what could happen is that, eventually Somalia collapses, so we have a further partition of it, like Ethiopia will get this land here, and then Kenya gets this land here. I don't know, like it's up to you guys. Yeah, but this is how the new borders will probably look like. And then I don't know what will happen to Uganda. They probably just like unify with Kenya. So yeah, really, it's up to you guys what will happen. Maybe here Kuwait will join Iraq. I don't know. It's again, it's up to you. Maybe Iraq will try to do a union here with Jordan. Like I don't know. And I don't know about these countries here. Here, no one probably wants to unify just yet. So yeah. Then I'm here once again. No one really wants to unify. So yeah, what could happen, in the future is that eventually, the BRICS countries begin, invading other countries. But I mean, I don't think they will do this. As they're democratic. It's more just like a war between democracies, not really because these countries are expansionist. They're less expansionist than OTL, but still not fully pro-Western. Anyways, what happened to Chad and Car? I mean, will they unify? I mean, Chad and Car sure to us, but honestly, not like a lot of valuable, but like not a lot of valuable land. I mean, I don't know the value that this land has. Plus, the capitals of both countries are like on the west, so they're probably fine. Card, they may try to unify with Cameroon, but once again, like these countries didn't really lose anything. So yeah, I really don't know. But yeah, this is the worst. Yeah, so this is So yeah, so this was, another scenario of like BRICS existing in a fully Western world. In this case, Russia and China were democracies, but still they are not fully pro-Western. That's why BRICS could still exist in a fully pro-Western world. So even in a world where Russia and China are democratic, and I still made a work here in NATO. And this time, it was definitely interesting, just as the video I made yesterday, but interesting, in different ways, with different alignments, countries joining different sides, in comparison to the video I made yesterday. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!